So, in meeting Bob Hicks, of course, now you were in Manhattan Beach, and he was your neighbor, but he was,
Yeah.
he turned out to be quite an influential person in your experiences as well. Tell me a little bit more about Bob, and of course, Bob was instrumental in you becoming aware of the Iso Rivolta.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bob was a big influence in my life. And I said that he did several tours, and so he lived over in London, and I went over there to visit him. And while I was there, he had a Road Track magazine, which I saw, and it had a picture of an Iso Rivolta. And I'd never heard of an Iso Rivolta, but I was taken by the appearance of it. And I said, now that's kind of what I have in mind for my play car. It was nice design, four-wheel disc brakes, leather interior, and I wanted something a little smaller, something that would perform. And the Iso, it was an Italian car using a Corvette engine, so it had the best of both worlds. So when I came back, I was talking to somebody on a flight, and I mentioned this car, and I said, well, you know, Joe Hunt has got one of those. And Joe Hunt was a flight engineer who is well known for the Joe Hunt magnetos that the Indy cars used. Again, another 2 or 3 weeks later, we had a company meeting, and I saw Joe there, and I went over to him and I said, somebody told me you had an Iso Rivolta. And he said, yeah. I said, I've been wanting to see what they look like. And he said, well, it's right out there in the parking lot. And he threw the keys to me. Take it. Take it for a drive. So I went out and looked at it. I didn't drive it, but I said, yeah, this is what I was hoping it would be. And so the next day, I think I went home, and you bought cars on the LA Times. They had a big car auto section. And so lo and behold, there was an Iso for sale. And again, I'd never heard of an Iso before, and there was one for sale. Turns out it belonged to a fellow named Ray Pep. And I went over to look at it, and it only had 9,000 miles on it. And he wanted $6,500, and he paid a lot more than that for it. And it was a new car. So I said, I'll take it, not knowing really what I was getting into. So I bought the car and brought it home. And it wasn't but a couple months later that I had a date up in Palos Verdes, and it was coming down Hawthorne Boulevard towards Pacific Coast Highway, and it was at night, and I saw all the lights ahead, and suddenly there was a car in front of me, and without my realizing it, out of nowhere there was a four-way stop. Long story short, I T-boned this guy, not badly. I almost got stopped, but it damaged the front of the car. So now I was in big trouble because I didn't know anything about the car, didn't know about a dealer, didn't know anything. And a short time later, I took a few days, hopped on a plane and went to Italy. I thought, well, what you do is you go to where the car is made. So I rented a car in Milan and went out to Brescia where the factory was. And I showed up at the gate, and there was a woman that was guarding the gate, and she didn't speak any English, because in those days, nobody spoke English. They didn't have cell phones. You didn't have GPS, nothing but a map. And about that time, a young fella in a new Iso Griffo pulled up and says, can you help me? And I said, well, I wanted to come over and get some parts from my car. Turns out he was Piero Rivolta, the son of Mr. Rivolta, who had just died earlier. And Piero was only like 25 years old and had taken over the company. And he said, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you today, but if you come over tomorrow, we'll take care of you. So the next day, I went out on the production line, said, well, I'll need this grill, I'll need this nose piece, I'll need these emblems and so forth. And they said, okay, they'll box them up, send them to me. And then Piero said, would you like to join us for lunch? And his palace, really was a palace, was on the factory grounds. And so he invited me over for lunch. And I said, can you imagine that if you had a problem with your Ford and showed up unannounced at Detroit and encountered Henry Ford and he invited you for lunch? Well, that's not likely going to happen. But that's the way it was with Piero, and to this day, I still know Piero, and I have a soft spot in my heart for the Iso because it was part of my family at that time. And ultimately, I did sell the Iso back to Buddy Pep, who was the son of Ray Pep. And Buddy Pep also has a Griffo and other cars. And he also was a director of the Peterson Museum for a while. So the Iso has gone full circle from Ray Pep to me to Buddy.